the broad discretion given to the NCAA to regulate the different types of compensation, the bottom line is that student athletes can now monetize their name, image, and likeness, their brand, photos of themselves. They can sponsor products, they can sell products, right? They can participate in advertising. And there are many, many rules, which I think Gianna is going to start getting into as a case study of one that we recently did. We were involved in a very early NIL deal, and she'll touch on that. But the new name, image, and likeness law, it's going to restrict payments for playing. There still is no pay for play, but players themselves can now enter into third-party deals, okay? And they can monetize their brand, especially when they have big followings in college football. Okay, so at the state level, many states are actually enacting their own NIL laws to support this. So some of the states that are enacting laws are Florida, Alabama, New Mexico, and Mississippi. And, Alabama very specifically says that student athletes must receive fair market value for their name, image, and likeness. So, they'll be able to gauge based on what the NCAA was getting for certain athletes and for their for their name, image, and likeness. And now that student athlete will be entitled to receive fair market value on a licensing deal, right? Georgia has taken a pretty radical approach itself. And what Georgia's doing is it's saying that any money received from the use of a name, image, and likeness of a player by an institution must now be redistributed. 75% of it must now be redistributed into a pool and shared with athletes, which, I mean, this is watershed as far as college sports go. We think it could get a lot better over time, but it's a big step in the right direction. Okay, what does that mean for you guys? I did have a few thoughts about that, and specifically for the students and some of you who are looking to be agents, and for the people at Roc Nation here. To me, this is very, very important, because if you're young and you're trying to kind of break through in the industry and become an agent, one of the hardest things is, okay, how do I get into this, right? And how do I meet players? And how am I going to sign somebody to an NFL contract, right, as a newbie? And I think approaching this from the NIL perspective opens up the doors, because what athletes at the college level now have to do is, many of them are going to find agents not for signing into the NFL or into the Euro League or wherever they're going to go. They're going to find agents who can bring them NIL deals, right? And a lot of the big agents, I can tell you right now, a lot of the big agents are not even looking at this. They're saying this is too small for us. We're not going to go find, the third player at a low level D1 school. We're not going to go find them a $10,000 deal, because we're focused on the $1 million deals. And I think this gives room to young agents to step in and say, hey, let's have a relationship. I can help you find an NIL deal. And eventually, when that athlete leaves the NCAA and enters professional sports, whether that's at the top level or the mid-level or in another country, you can be there as the agent. And so if I were in your position and I was looking to enter the profession as an agent, NIL would be the perfect entry point, right? Because you can find a player and say, okay, theoretically, you can find a player and say, okay, look, I found you a deal on, where you're going to sell the Quip toothbrush or whatever it is on Instagram, okay? But you build a relationship with that player. And when that player finishes college or is gearing, their senior year, you'll be there in a conversation, be able to say, hey, I'd love to represent you, if you're going to sign in Spain next year, right? Or whatever that looks like. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the young and up and coming agents. So in short, for the younger agents, this is an opportunity to get in, because it may not be a huge deal, but you can help a college athlete monetize even at a very low level. I mean, we've seen that a lot of NIL deals aren't that big unless you're one of the top performers in the NCAA. But it's an opportunity to engage in a conversation, show that you can bring something to the table, and perform work for someone who will be entering or could be entering professional sports at a later date. And for young agents, I don't think there's a more fruitful opportunity that's been presented in the last few decades. And if I were in that business, this is what I would be attacking right now as getting my foot in the door. So that's all. I'll pass to Gianna. I just wanted to thank you again. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. And I think Gianna's got some great info on specific case studies and the types of deals you can enter into. And I'll probably chime in there as well because I can't help myself. I get excited.
Now that the laws have changed, a lot of the student athletes now have the opportunity to enter in some of these licensing deals. So I'm sure you're all aware, student athletes now have the ability to enter into these agreements where entities would pay them, and in exchange, the entities could use their name, image, and likeness in commerce. Now, when the students are entering into these deals, it's important that they think about what's best for them. For example, if there's a very popular student, they might decide, I don't want a lump sum, I want royalties. All my friends and families and all my colleagues and my large social media follower, they'll all buy shirts with my face on it. So that's something to consider rather than, just accepting a license deal where they get a few $1,000s if, there's a way to make money. Something else to think about is whether these licensing deals are exclusive versus non-exclusive. When someone's starting out, they may want the freedom to work with other people, but the entity might want to have them sign this agreement where they can only work with them. Something else to consider is the term. Does this, although the student athlete is signing this deal now, who knows, maybe in 2 or 3 years, as they continue to play, they may have the opportunity to make more money. So when entering into these deals, it's just important to have someone, whether it's an agent or a lawyer, to make sure that you're getting the best deal.
See the link here. This is a link to SpencerRattlerShop.com. Spencer Rattler is one of the top NFL quarterbacks in the country. He's at Oklahoma. And, instead of just jumping on the traditional NIL deal nice and early, he set up an entire merch site for his own brand. Yeah, S7, right? Spencer, his initial, and the 7. And he is now selling his own merch across everything. So let's say Spencer's, career continues on the trajectory that it's on, right? He's one of the top QBs. Let's say he enters the NFL and Nike's going to come after him. But you know what? He can then say, well, I want my own line, kind of like the Jordan brand, right? He can say, I'm not interested. I'm just going to continue, winning Super Bowls or whatever it is and selling my own sneakers and clothing, right? Or he can say, sure, I'll sell it to you, but it's going to be at, 100% markup of whatever you were going to do had I not established this brand for myself. And of course, look, he's a 1%er example when it comes to college sports, but you can get pretty creative with how you structure your NIL in college, or even earlier, as we see from Puma exploring high school NIL deals, right? And that can really expand your brand and your monetization later when you're an adult in professional sports. And if you take, for those of you that follow basketball, if you take the Zion Williamson scenario and you apply it and you do what Spencer did here, Zion would have been a multi-millionaire before he entered the NBA. He was the biggest thing in college basketball in the last 20 years, right? And so anyways, just an example of what can be done, right?
So this is what Taso was mentioned earlier. This is one of our first student athletes that we worked with. We were very excited to have this opportunity. So what happened in this instance was a restaurant actually approached a student athlete. This was a well-known student athlete, and they entered into a creator agreement. And what happened here was that the student athlete was required to make certain social media posts and have certain hashtags, reference the restaurant for a certain amount of time. And the athlete was paid a significant amount of money. Now, if that's something that a student athlete should consider. So let's just say they have a large social media following. They know that they have loyal fans. They can consider market themselves in a way to obtain endorsements. You can say, I have a lot of followers. My followers take my suggestions. What can we work out? So this was pretty exciting. Although the requirements were pretty strict, for example, of course, all the images had to be approved. And of course, the athlete couldn't be seen associating with any competitors. And of course, you have to use the specific hashtags, but to be paid, a few $1,000s to take pictures or take videos eating food from a restaurant you like seems like a pretty good deal for the athlete. So that's something that student athletes can consider. And if you have a pretty large social media following, that's something that you can market for yourself.
So just back to this example with one of our first NIL student athlete deals, from a much more technical side on the legal, what we had to do here and what Gianna did was, like I said earlier, the landscape is very Wild West when it comes to NIL throughout the country now. So just a few of the technical steps Gianna had to take were that we had to cross-reference the terms of the deal with the rules of the school. Okay, so that was the first thing. Make sure we weren't violating any school rules that would jeopardize our client's scholarship or their ability to play, right? I mean, even if it didn't jeopardize the scholarship, we don't want him suspended or her suspended for anything, right? Or suspended from play or missing games. So the first thing is, what we did is go through the school rules and the NCAA rules as well. Then we wanted to reconcile in the particular state we were operating in. They had specific state laws. And so we wanted to reconcile that proposed contract from the brand with the state laws that this player was playing in. And then, finally, I think what's really important for you guys that are going to be negotiating some of these in the next couple of years is because it's a very Wild West landscape, what you really want to insist when you're negotiating, a lot of you, you may not be negotiating the contract terms, because that's, at that point it gets to someone like us. But you will be negotiating the basic terms, or what they call the LOI, the letter of intent, or the deal sheet, right, that the lawyers will work on. And it's important in that deal sheet that you allow flexibility. And what I mean by that is, because it's the Wild West and the landscape is changing so quickly, you don't want to sign a deal that in 6 months or a year will have you violating your school's policy or the state laws or whatever it is. And what we try to do, and what Gianna did there, was put in language that says, like, look, if anything changes as far as the law or the rules of the NCAA or the rules of the school, this contract has to automatically modify so that we're not suspended or lose a scholarship or whatever that is. Because yes, you may be getting a nice little chunk of money, but is it worth losing everything else if something changes? And we all know the answer to that. So those three things, the school regs, the state regs, and the ability to have flexibility if those change, are critical points for agents or for student athletes or for whoever's representing them that are negotiating these deals up front. And Congress recently created a subcommittee that's been exploring a federal NIL law, which would really make things a lot easier, because it's kind of like the Wild West out there right now, right? So, the Supreme Court case came down. Each conference and each school is making their own rules now for how they're going to handle NIL. But states themselves are now creating NIL laws, right? So you have Florida with different rules than Alabama, with different rules than Georgia and Mississippi. And it's creating a ton of confusion out there in the marketplace. I mean, you really have to be careful when you're looking at these contracts, especially on our end, right? You don't, which state are you operating in? What are the school's rules? What are the state's rules? How does it reconcile with the Alston case, right? But if Congress does move forward eventually with the federal NIL law, that can really be a game changer and can really streamline all of this, right?